Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1.
Oh Polly, it's for your sake alone. I left my dear old father, my country and my home. I left my dear old mother to weep and to mourn. I am a rebel soldier and far from my home. It's grape shot and musket and the cannon lumber loud. There's many a mangled body, the blanket for their shroud. There's many a mangled body left on the fields alone. I am a rebel soldier and far from my home.
Okay, I'm James White. We're coming to you live here from Kalispell, Montana. It is the 18th day of November, 2020. Thanks so much for joining us here in the broadcast. I've been a little under the weather the last couple of days, but feeling much better now. Looking forward to continuing to charge forward and trying to save this republic from the criminals that are trying to overrun us and take it over. And one of the ways that they do that is by breaking up families. And one of the main weapons that are used. I can hear you now. I think, Melissa. I think you're good. One of the main weapons that they have are CPS and family courts, and they've done a masterful job, sadly, of breaking up families and causing havoc across the country. And the guest I have on today certainly would attest to that. If you're not familiar with Melissa Diegel's story, I'll give you the cliff notes. Essentially, she was charged with a crime for surgeries that were performed by a licensed surgeon. The state claims that apparently she somehow tricked the surgeon into performing surgeries, and they're charging her with crimes, and she's never performed surgeries. Not a surgeon, doesn't claim to be. Doesn't matter. They're coming after her anyway, and we've got her on the line today to talk about that and other things. Melissa Diegel, thanks so much for joining us here on the broadcast on Critical Disclosure. It's always great to see you. Too bad it's always under these circumstances, but that's the battle that we're in right now, and we just have to fight it, where we're at. And I just appreciate you being here, and thanks so much for joining us on the program.
Thanks for having me on here today. I appreciate it.
Well, you're quite welcome. Okay, so let's do. I tell you what, we got. There's people that have been here that are probably watching here that have never seen you before or watched the show before, or people will as this goes out. Why don't we just to start off, let's just give a very brief background, just to catch people up, just a Cliff Notes version, if you will. I kind of touched on it basically with the surgery, and you're getting charged with this madness. But give us a little bit of a background just so we can catch people up, and then we'll get right into. I got a couple documents here on the screen for you to put up, and we're going to get an update on your case. I believe you just had a hearing or something recently. It's all Zoom these days, so But go ahead, Melissa. I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. For people that are not familiar with my case, my daughter's case, it was my two daughters that were taken, and I have 3 children. So they left my son in my home, and they took my 2 daughters that had medical conditions. And they were age 10 and 12 when they were taken from Phoenix Children's Hospital in Arizona. And I had fired the gastroenterologist about 2 weeks before CPS was called and my daughters were removed. My case is the beginning part of medical kidnapping in the United States. There have been children that have been medically kidnapped for years, but the general public did not understand what was happening, and there was no term put on that. So my daughter's case launched medical kidnapping, and I was an advocate prior to my daughters being taken. So I've been an advocate for over 10 years. I have a early childhood education. I've owned my own preschool for 6 years. I mean, I have a lot of family and children background. And when they took my daughters, I didn't just fight to get my daughters back, but We started teams of people here in the state of Arizona that have done numerous things over the course of the last 6.5 years since my daughters were removed, that has Arizona being the epicenter of child protective services in the country being such a mess. Every state has problems, but the problems that we've dug up with Arizona were beyond horrendous. So I've written numerous reports to specific agencies and Trump's team and that kind of thing. So we have some connections now. People have proper information of what's going on in Arizona, and I'm looking forward to arrests around the corner.
That's great news. I hope we're going to be getting some arrests in a lot of different areas in this country, but there's no doubt, folks. And when I tell you that I've just about talked to parents in about all 50 states, maybe save a few, and there's been no state that I have found that is more corrupt and abuses parents more than the state of Arizona. Hands down. There's a couple that are kind of close. Arizona, though, takes the cake. I mean, it's preposterous what goes on, and I know that you mentioned earlier. I know there's been a lot of people that have been, sort of become an activist. I know Melinda Sherwin, for example, does a lot of court stuff, and she has a group of people that, they're starting to. Here's the thing, Melissa. One of the good things, I guess, if you want to say that, one of the good things out of this whole COVID thing is the Zoom meetings now that they're forced to do. And what happens is like court watchers are able to get in and kind of monitor those Zoom meetings. So there's like another layer of observation by pro-parent people that are watching this now that maybe wouldn't have been there before, because everybody can't always get to the courthouse, but most people can get in on the Zoom meeting. So I think that's at least something positive out of all that. Do you see that?
It's definitely positive, but what people don't realize is that we had to fight to get the court watchers into the court hearings that they were doing like on Zoom or telephonically. So what people don't realize is they were denying us that right. And it started with my case in particular. And we had court watchers and we have teams of people, and they were calling in, and eventually were able to push through to get to the point. But let me tell you, they were denied the right to listen in to several of my hearings. It's supposed to be public access here in the state of Arizona. And again, we have people fighting here in the state of Arizona for tooth and nail for every little thing, for every parental right that we can possibly fight for. It's not an easy task. Like I said, we have teams of people. So we've been doing this for a number of years. And with each changing factor, we have to push and push and push. And if there weren't teams of people like us out here in Arizona, we would not be able to accomplish, and they would have even more secretive court hearings. So I'm so grateful to the people that stay on top of that, all the court watchers and the teams of people.
You see, I see the criminality in the CPS and the family court, and then I see the criminality, as you just stated, about not letting people into the courtroom there. And then you see the obvious voter fraud that went on. I'm starting to believe that Arizona is just run by nothing but a bunch of crooks, for crying out loud, Melissa.
Absolutely run by crooks. And it's horrendous what's going on here, the crimes. It is, for the general public to understand, it's really mafia-like. It's very... they're all basically in bed together. They all know each other and they all scratch each other's back, but you have to understand they're committing crimes. And so what I've done over the last 6.5 years is tracked the players involved with those crimes, the playbook they use. And I didn't just track my case, we tracked numerous cases. So just recently I wrote a report that's been turned over to authorities that is based on 30 additional cases in the state of Arizona. So we now have comprised with affidavits and extensive information in regards to child protective services here in the state of Arizona and the crimes that they've committed. And some of the crimes they've committed would be racketeering, which is organized crime. But then we also have the fact that children are being abused in the foster care system, some of them losing their lives and being murdered, and Child Protective Services is covering up. So one of the cases involved with the 30 cases is a child that was murdered that fell out of the attic. We also have a child that was severely burned. 80% of her body was burned by the foster/adoptive mother. We have Social Security cases here where they take the child so that they can get matching funds for the Social Security, like for children of veterans. So we have comprised all these cases together, and I would encourage other states to do that too, to gather these cases together. I really encourage people to write an affidavit and have factual documentation that you have comprised in well-written reports in order to present to the proper authorities. Now, as we know, there's a lot of there's been some bad people in the FBI and the DOJ and everything. So getting through to the right people is really important, but I would encourage people not to give up. And if I could just add one more thing in regards to the state of Arizona, not only have we tracked all these players and their playbook, so we know distinctly how they work and operate. In fact, they're running out of plays. So they're repeating the same plays over and over again in these cases. So we know their pattern. But we have distinctively served documentation to authoritative agencies in the state of Arizona. So as you have one of those documents to put up on your screen, we can prove that the Director of Child Protective Services, Greg McKay, Mark Brnovich, who's the Attorney General in the state of Arizona, Sheriff Arpaio, who used to be the sheriff, and others, Doug Ducey's office, have all been served distinctive information in these cases. So originally what we had done is we had put 5 families together and we went to the FBI. Okay, so the FBI did nothing. And we weren't the only families that went to the FBI in Arizona, but there was 5 distinctive families with very specific documentation, all of the children being abused in the state's care underneath the guise of Child Protective Services. And this is a huge deal because now, as you can see, years later, that was back in 2015 that they had signed for that documentation. So I've continued to serve exculpatory evidence as they press criminal charges against me. But I've served them evidence in my case that not only proves my innocence, but proves what they have done in my case as far as RICO, racketeering, the judges involved, the lawyers involved, the caseworkers, the police department. There's, we know there's a lot of crime going on in the United States. I think the general public really understands that now.
Right.
But we have reached an epic level.
Well, tell me about Arpaio's involvement, because that's the second time in 2 days that someone has told me that, and one of them is a pretty good confidant of mine that gives me information that Arpaio's not necessarily the guy that everybody thinks he is. He's, and I don't know, I don't want to besmirch his character. I don't have any proof or any evidence, but you might. Can you tell me how Arpaio got involved? Because I thought he was going after, the birth certificate, him and Mike Zullo, and they were doing positive things to help uncover, crimes. Was he committing them while he was uncovering them?
So that's the only interesting thing, or that's the interesting thing about all the people on that paper that signed. Personally,
90 seconds.
I believe that Arpaio was trying. He was trying to make a difference. Having been in jail and falsely accused and put in jail for 6 months, I was able to connect with a lot of other people in jail. And in general, Arpaio does not have a bad reputation in jail. The current sheriff, Paul Pinzone, is dirty, and he's the one that people will speak,
60
about
seconds.
poorly.
Hold on, let me end this episode here. I put the wrong timing. It looks like we're going to be ending the... Okay.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio.
Sorry about
Goodbye.
that. All right. So we're off the Blog Talk, but anyway, we're on plenty of other networks. Sorry, go ahead. Sorry about that interruption. Please continue.
Okay, so Sheriff Arpaio, I think, was trying. There were too many dirty people, and the criminal people surrounding him were too strong, and he couldn't fight through that. Which is why I believe they eventually tried to take him out, with holding him in contempt of court and pushing and pushing and pushing. So I believe he was attempting but did not have the ability or enough support behind him to clean house. And as I've been doing this for so long now, we really clearly see who the players are. So for instance, Alistair Adele was just on the ballot. It appears that she won out. She was placed into office back in September. She was placed in September 2019. She was placed into office. She replaced Bill Montgomery. Now, Alistair Adele is the primary prosecuting attorney for the state of Arizona. She runs the show, okay? So what Ducey has been doing, our governor, has been placing specific people into place. So without the voters voting on it, he's placed about 70 judges, okay, in authoritative positions as judges, who it's had a devastating effect on the families and children here. Then he's placed Alistair Adele, who then went on the ballot and allegedly won after it appeared that the other person that was running had won. So again, you've got voter fraud. So this is how they can distinctly, if there is voter fraud going on, which I believe there is, and there has consistently been, we know it's probably not just the president that is literally that they've messed with. It's other people that they've gotten into office, which have then taken away our constitutional rights to protect ourselves. So they're removing children without warrants. We're not allowed a jury trial in the CPS courts. Now they've taken all the information from my adjudication hearing, which is the trial you have for CPS, and they've slid it into my criminal case. Had I had a jury trial back then, I wouldn't be facing these charges. Had they not suppressed exculpatory evidence, I wouldn't be facing these charges.
Yeah, folks, if you're just tuning in here kind of for the first time, or you're not really, you're kind of getting this is the opening salvo to what's going on here with CPS and family court. They're unconstitutional courts. They're not constitutional. They don't offer the victims in this case to have due process. You don't get a chance to get in front of a jury of your peers. Oftentimes, you don't get a chance to produce evidence. You don't get a chance to call witnesses in on your behalf. And again, Melissa, I don't know if they've ever said it to you, but I've had people on this program before that have stated they've heard the judges say openly, you don't bring the Constitution into this courtroom. Now, they gag parents routinely, so they charge you with a crime that you didn't commit, and then they gag you so you can't go and defend yourself. The thing that gets me, Melissa, I guess the thing that really, I've done, I don't know how many hundreds of interviews and talked to hundreds more parents. I just don't understand how we could have let this so open criminality against the public without due process, a total just dereliction of these judges' responsibility to follow the Constitution for so long, and no one has done anything about it until like the last year to 2 years or 3 years. They've really been hit. I mean, you've been working for a long time, but I mean, it's really coming into focus now, and a lot more people, like, this is never going away now because there's way too many people. But it hasn't been like that for a long time. I mean, you asked me 3 years ago if somebody would have said, yeah, I got my children got taken by CPS. I would have went, what'd you do? Well, I didn't do anything. No, come on, really. What'd you do? Just to be level with me. What'd you do to have your children taken? Now I know that it's a freaking fraud, that in almost 90% of the cases, the children don't need to be taken. They get taken for money. So, I mean, I can't understand how it's been allowed to go on this long, Melissa. I mean, I guess like you said, they just appoint people in positions who are in the program.
That's exactly. So what I really want people to understand here is, and maybe you can understand this now because of where we're at in our country. The reason they've been able to accomplish what they're accomplishing is because the agenda that they had. So the agenda is the communist agenda, for us not to have our constitutional rights and for people to take over the country and for the little man or the general public to literally be crushed and to be completely controlled. So now we know how, because what's happening is they are committing voter fraud. In fact, Sidney Powell just announced yesterday that in Venezuela, that was a rigged election. The wrong person was put in charge. the wrong person because they committed voter fraud. So the question is, how long have they been doing this, and who got into positions of power in order? I mean, there have been families fighting, not enough towards the beginning, but it's been at least for the last 20 years that this has been significantly bad. I do have friends that have been fighting for 20 years. Okay. And so it has been very bad, but it's because we haven't been able to get anywhere because the people in power are evil. They're bad. And I can prove that by the fact that they were served evidence in our case and the FBI did nothing in the state of Arizona. Okay. We went to the DOJ. I have documentation from 20 agencies in the state of Arizona that received direct evidence in my case and or many other cases in Arizona. Okay. And none of them did anything to protect the children or families. Now, when a crime is reported about a child being harmed in the state's care and they do nothing, that's a different level of badness going on. I could say a stronger word, but I'll refrain.
Well, I just want to reiterate a point that I've put out on this broadcast numerous times. You hear, 97% of the agents are good. Well, 7% of the agents are good. They're just in a bad system. Nope. The FBI needs to be burned to the ground and started over again. It's so corrupt. It's not. I can't tell you how many parents in Montana. I had a parent call me and said I had evidence of this. My daughter's ex-husband trafficking kids. Turned it over to the FBI. Nothing happened. It died after that. It just went away. After we turned it over to the feds, nothing happened. This is a crime syndicate. And many members of the FBI are involved. Sorry, FBI, if you're watching, but you're crooked. I don't know what else to say. You're criminals. You're crooks. The most of you are. That's just, I've never gotten evidence to prove me otherwise. I only continue to get evidence to prove what I just said to be true, right? They're crooks. Not every single one of them, but most of them. I'm not saying 80%. I'm saying 80% of them are bad or more. That's my view. That's what I see.
So, one of the things too is that people have to have courage, and when you're stuck in a system where a lot of the people are evil and that sort of thing. So I want to give a distinct example in my case. We have Judge Colleen McNally here in the state of Arizona. She is technically retired, but they just did a movie where she was in it. And these retired judges go on to be put on panels who continue to do devastating things to children and families. So they don't go away. They're still there. They're just not sitting on the bench per se, severing rights. So Judge Colleen McNally was one of the top presiding judges in the state of Arizona for CPS cases. And she was not the judge who severed my rights, but she was continually put on cases where they hauled me into court to hold me in contempt, even for cases I'm not even a party to. That means I'd be sitting in the audience listening, not even an audience, but as an observer, court watcher, and I'd be hauled into court for contempt of court. So I did win one of the particular cases against Judge Colleen McNally. I did take my case to the Arizona Supreme Court, and I can get really detailed, but I want to say that particular judge, this was back in 2014 or 2015, where I was standing in front of her. She told me to hand over the names and addresses, phone numbers, and email addresses of every person I had ever talked to about my case. And I told her, no, that's what the Gestapo did in Germany, and would break into people's homes and tell on your neighbor, or we're hauling your husband away. And this is what happened. And this has been happening for years. So this is the level that we're at in Arizona. I do have documentation to back all of that up. Like I just said, she actually put it in writing. I refused to hand over the names and addresses because she would have gone into those people's homes and taken their children in order to threaten them. And that's the level we're at in Arizona. We've been at this level, this red alert level, for at least 5 years, where it's so bad here that they are arresting parents. Now, some parents, or some CPS shows and people talk about, they're not even arresting the parents. They are here. They are arresting the parents in the state of Arizona. They are suppressing the exculpatory evidence, not only in the CPS court, but in the criminal court system. So the parents don't even have a chance, and they're sent to prison.
Right, they are now. Generally speaking, though, up until recently, and this whole Munchausen's phenomena kicked off here. Usually parents had their children taken and they weren't charged with anything. I mean, the majority of parents, if you had to look at it in the overall scope of things, save Arizona, put that aside. Generally speaking, across the country, these parents have their children taken. They don't get charged with the crime. They don't get charged with the crime. It's like, well, you've taken my children, the most precious asset, and I've done nothing wrong. But and then once you sign that document that you're going to be involved in the plan, they got you. At that point, once you sign in. Folks, don't let these people in your house, and don't sign anything. Don't sign anything they give you, because once you sign, forget it. You're just admitting I'm guilty and I need your help, and then they're in your life and they're never out of your life.
You can revoke your right if you did sign. So just for parents to keep that in mind, okay? Because what that is they're making you enter into a contract under duress. And these contracts they have. So let me explain a little bit about Arizona DCS and how they work. I also want to throw some stats out there. Okay, so over the federal stats say that only 9% of the children going into foster care were sexually or physically abused, allegedly. Okay, so that's 91% of the children that are being removed were not physically or sexually abused. Now you have to think of the marketing of CPS, and they say, oh, we're saving the children, we're saving them. No, they're not. They're taking 91% of the children that should never have been removed in the first place, and they're placing them into the system. Okay. Now, if you know the human trafficking, sex trafficking stats, between 70 to 90% of the children that are sex trafficked come from Child Protective Services. So we have a system that is feeding into the sex trafficking ring in the state, federally. Okay. Now let's back it up and let's simplify it a little bit. Okay. In the state of Arizona, we actually have a parental rights bill that protects parents, but is being completely overlooked and usurped by the judges here in the state of Arizona. So we do have laws on the books to help us and protect us. This includes medically kidnapped parents and children. We have the right to decide medical care for our children. That bill did not matter. Why did that bill not matter when my children were removed? Because the judges sitting on the bench who take an oath of office to the Constitution are not following the Constitution, because they were placed there because of the stringent agenda of communism. And the people that were placed there who are in power are usurping the Constitution. So then we have the problem of no juries. Did you know most parents, until their children are taken, have no clue they're never going to get a jury trial after their child was taken? Is this America? Should we be having a jury trial? Absolutely. So they're taking away that right. And then on top of it, they're not allowing witnesses or exculpatory evidence in the adjudication hearings, which is what they call the trials for CPS. Now, Trump just passed on October 21st, 2020, through Congress. It went through Congress. Okay, so, and it is called the name just flew out of my head. Due Process Protections Act. Okay, very, very important. So, if you know anything about case law, you have Brady versus Maryland. Okay, so we're supposed to have these things that help protect us in America, whether it be a laws or maybe it's setting case precedent, which my case will set. But so there's Brady versus Maryland, and in Brady versus Maryland, they basically said, I'm going to simplify it, you can't withhold evidence that proves somebody's innocent. You can't hide that. You have to put that on the record. Okay, so what's happening in these CPS courts is they're hiding it. So Trump and Congress went in. See, when people say, what's Trump doing? He actually is trying. He's trying very hard, much like I think Arpaio did years ago. But Trump's at a different level. So they've gone in and they've changed some of these laws. But guess who's not following the laws? The judges, the case managers, the prosecutors. So this new Protections Act is very distinct. And it says, hey, you know what, prosecutors? You need to follow the law. You cannot suppress exculpatory evidence. So a unique feature in my case is that I've been literally serving proper service these the exculpatory evidence for years to these players. And this includes people like Alistair Adele, Mark Brnovich, the Attorney General, Doug Ducey, the governor, at the FBI. But very important, because they know of the crimes, they continue to suppress the crimes, and they have documentation to prove that I'm innocent, specifically from the CASA. Now, the CASA is good in some people's case, and sometimes they're not, which is a court-appointed special advocate. There's federal funding for that witness to help protect the child. And in my case, they did come forward. They tried to help protect my children. They were threatened by the state prosecutors. They were forced to destroy exculpatory evidence on audio. And all of that has been suppressed. So then from that came an affidavit saying that the state of Arizona literally damaged and hurt my children to such an extent and level that it almost caused a near fatality in one of my daughters. But this is all suppressed. So this now becomes federal funding fraud in my case, because they are literally not only suppressing exculpatory evidence that proves that I'm innocent and I never should have been charged or indicted, but in addition, they've committed federal funding fraud because they received money for this CASA, and CASAs have a lot of power in the case.
Well, here's the thing that I want people to understand, and you can certainly add or subtract from this list, but you talked about arrests. If this whole thing starts coming down, folks, you're going to see judges, prosecutors, teachers, doctors, social workers, guardian ad litems, prosecuting attorneys, all these people in some level or another, sheriffs, FBI, local police department, pastors. Yep. We've had people on the show where the pastor of their church was actually the pimp running, I think, 10 or 12 girls. This is the type of evil that we're up against. And if it all comes out, you're going to see people in all those type of professions get arrested for child trafficking. Am I stating that too strongly, Melissa? Please follow up with that.
No, you're absolutely correct. And I also want people to understand this is a war on families and children, a war. And when I say war, I mean war. There are casualties. So on Sunday night, one of the people that I distinctly work with was murdered. Okay.
Yeah, Chris Hallett, poor Chris.
His name is Chris Hallett, and he was a warrior in this movement to try to help protect children and families' rights in the United States. And he was murdered. So when I say war, it's very, very personal to me. These are people that I work with. Chris Hallett in particular, we were working on a project together. The last post he made was, "I'm finally finished." And then he was murdered the next day.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with Chris because the whole thing with Cindy Absick and all that, and that Kurt Pendergrass and all that. Yeah, he was certainly he was a warrior for families, and it's a devastating blow. It's almost like losing a running back or a quarterback or something for a football team. I mean, he was really good, and I think that he was he's been going after the bar because the bar's crooked.
He's been going after the American Bar Association.
Yep.
He's done numerous amounts of things for years.
Yep.
Years. And I've been working with him for years. And in fact, this is very dangerous what we do when they put a bullet hole through my kitchen window. Chris is who I picked up the phone and called. So, I mean, this is the type of thing that's going on. People don't realize. I'm not asking you to be fearful of standing up. I'm saying it's going to get worse if you don't stand up. We need as many families and children standing up and fighting back as possible, because their intention towards us, look, they're coming for your children next. Okay. They've set it up with COVID. They're coming in. They've already removed children because the parents have COVID. So now they need to remove the children. The children are coming back home. The stats for Maricopa County, Arizona, where I live, 99.96 of the children never come back home once they're removed by Child Protective Services. We are the worst county in the entire United States. We are fighting a war, people, and you need to fight back.
Well, I don't think I've reported this on the show before, but when Cindy Absick fled here to Kalispell, I go for a walk across the street at the park, and I had some of these 3 or 4 of these guys shadowing me. I actually had to go up and take I had to go up the side of a hill into a not very well path. These guys were like closing in on me, and it was like 7 degrees below zero, and these guys were outside sitting on the bench. Come on. What am I, an idiot? these guys, you know, they actually tried to surround me and kind of close in on me. Like I said, I had to bail up the side of the hill. But yeah, this is serious business. I don't know what they were, you know, I'm not saying they were going to harm me necessarily. They probably just wanted to know where Cindy was. But this is serious stuff. I mean, these people, you know, they walked by my house. They would surveil my house when she was in town. So this is a network of scoundrels. There's no doubt about it. I don't know how much power they have. I think their power is waning. And as evidence comes out and as things are brought into the light, you know, that harms their power. But they're still pretty powerful. I mean, there's no doubt about it. We can't deny that. They've got a lot of power still, sadly.
Right. So we're at a point, Sidney Powell actually mentioned this yesterday. She said a willful blindness. We're at a point where people are willfully being blind. They are choosing to be blind to what's happening here in the United States. Now, if we look back into Germany and the Nazis and all of that, people think, well, how could that happen? How could that happen? Willful blindness. Willful blindness. People are choosing to be blind to what is really happening in the United States. You think it's never going to happen to you. It is happening. What we're headed for potentially in the future is catastrophic. We're already at a horrible level here in the United States with children and families. We're talking millions of children over the course of years have been removed. Millions, because there's 500,000 children in the CPS system right now, every year, pretty much, you know, we'll just do an average. Okay. So you add that up, it is millions and millions and millions and millions. Do you see where I'm getting my millions? I'm trying to describe to you where I'm getting my millions from. Millions of children are being taken. If 91% of those don't need to be taken, millions of children are being harmed and human trafficked through Child Protective Services. Now somebody could say, okay, it's the government, No, let me explain something here. Okay, so Trump did a series of executive orders to help protect the American people, but you have such bad people in power, they're not following the laws, right? Okay, but as an example, Child Protective Services here in the state of Arizona is a for-profit agency. They used to be connected directly to the government, but that was dissolved back in 2014 when Governor Jan Brewer put out an executive order to separate it from the government. So they are now a for-profit agency. Now you can understand why they can come in here and arrest them, okay? Because they're not attacking, it's not government agency against government agency. It's government against people who are receiving government funding for a for-profit agency that's human trafficking children. Now, not every CPS business is set up like that in all across the United States, but we have distinctually tracked that, and it's all in my federal reports. So if you're listening to the show and you need to contact me, I just want to throw out my contact information, which is letjusticeprevail@protonmail.com. That's letjusticeprevail@protonmail.com. Okay, if you need to reach me. But I have comprised these federal reports, not only of my case and tracking the players and CPS and how they work, okay, to where some of the funding comes from, the contracts that they have, those are in my federal reports. And then on top of it, you also have the 30 cases in the state of Arizona that distinctly show how and why they take these children for money, for profit, because these children are products to them, products.
You know, I've often wondered, you know, is it going to come down to where, I mean, these are criminals don't give up power. No, right. That's why crooks, they don't show up at the police station and turn themselves in normally. Cops have to go out and apprehend them. You have to apprehend criminals is what you have to do, right? That's why we have police, to apprehend criminals. Police are just people like us, folks. If there's criminals running things, I'm afraid the only way that some of these people are going to get out is if people all get together and go apprehend them and remove them from positions of power. Say, well, that's radical, Jim. That's crazy. Oh, it is? What's crazy is 90% of the children that get taken don't need to be taken. And here's another thing that people don't understand. Arizona, Mexican mafia, Mexican drug cartels. Who's the biggest transporter of drugs in this country, especially the southern border? The Mexican cartels. Who's the biggest trafficker of children in the Mexican cartels? Come on, folks. This is a pipeline down here in Arizona of children that get sent out to the Mexican cartels, and go all over places all across the world. You say 98% of these children never get back, 99.6%. Some of them don't even stay in Arizona. That's what people don't understand. They get trafficked out of the state to even to other countries. They get sent to other countries. I mean, folks, this is a national tragedy beyond belief. It believe it or not, it eclipses this voter fraud thing that's going on here. This is worse. You say, voter fraud's pretty bad. Doesn't compare to the travesty and the crimes going on right now in family court system.
That is absolutely true. And it is devastating here. These agencies in the state of Arizona that claim to protect families, or we have these laws on the books, we might get to a point where we do have a civil war. And quite frankly, if we don't have some results coming in soon with people being arrested, I do believe we will end up in a physical civil war, because there are many of us that are unwilling to watch as the last bit of our country collapses. A lot of people have woken up over the last many years. That's one thing I'm really thankful for about Trump, is that a lot of people have woken up. I mean, it was hard. These people were willful blindness, were asleep for years, and now there's millions of us. Okay, there's approximately at least 80 million people in the United States that are at least semi-woke, if not fully woke, and are willing to stand up to fight back against the cabal that is and the evil that's happening. And really, people need to understand that CPS is mass marketed that they are a agency that helps children. And I can tell you the federal statistics clearly show they are 3 to 4 times more likely to die in foster care than they are in a parent's biological home. These are federal stats, people.
State of Texas,
okay?
2017, I think it was 2018, 653 children, I believe, died in a course of a year. Well, if I remember, I used to have, I can't remember the name of the gal that was on the show from Texas, Livia. She had all stats, 600 and something children, I think, in 2017, 2018. I don't remember exactly the year, but it had died in the care of Child Protective Services in Texas. They were under their care. Over 600 children perished in care of Child Protective Services. Where's the outrage? Where's the outrage?
So this is what they do. So we actually have teams of people that have worked on this here in the state of Arizona. So we actually have people in our legislators that have tried to put a law on the books that hides all the deaths in Child Protective Services. Then we have our team of people working, and even David Farnsworth as a senator was working on this for a little while too, where they're trying to bring to light the children that were being murdered in Child Protective Services. And so I can tell you for a fact, when a child goes into foster care in the state of Arizona and a parent reports it to the CPS hotline, that report does not generate a regular report, is actually hidden, and we have that in writing. So we know that when the child's being harmed or is in the potential to be murdered in foster care, they are ignoring those cases because that produces liability for the state. Okay. Now remember, the children that once they go into the system, their abuse is more likely, their murder is more likely than the biological home. So they're suppressing all of those reports. They're not helping the children, and children are being murdered. And then in addition, if the child goes missing, let's say the child is murdered and then they hide the child, like a distinctive case here in the state of Arizona, I'll refrain from saying the names, but it was in the newspaper, where the child was murdered, placed in the attic, and then 2 years later, there was a fire and the child fell out of the attic, and the fireman, I believe, is who found the child, and then the foster parents who had adopted that child were charged. Let me tell you the backstory of that child. Okay, so the child was removed from the mother and placed with, I believe it was the uncle. Okay, he had custody of that. I think there was 2 children for a period of at least a year. And then that child was ripped by CPS because there's not enough funding doing it that way. Remember, the children are product, and placed literally in with foster care, and was adopted by this couple. It was I believe it was a gay couple, and The child was murdered. Then the child was hidden, and CPS didn't have to report anything. Oh, well, the child went missing until the child fell out of the attic. Okay. These are children. These are children. These are living, breathing, human, wonderful little beings, and people. The bad people are coming and taking these children, and they're murdering them. Now, why did that child would have never been murdered had she remained with the uncle at least? But they're motivated by money. They're motivated by money, and they're murdering the children across the United States, and they're raping them, and they're putting them in cages. We have distinctive cases here in the Arizona where they've put them in cages. I have direct documentation with cases where hangers were put up the bum of children who were being sexually molested in the state's care. Do you understand the level we're at here? These children aren't being saved by Child Protective Services. They're being murdered and harmed and raped by Child Protective Services.
There's no worse place for a child to end up than in the clutches of Child Protective Services, folks. Look how they've just totally conned us right in the open with the name itself. The name itself, Child Protective Services, disarms like 85%. That name just disarms 85% of the people. I can't believe you're telling me that. It's called Protective Services. What, are you stupid? They're protecting kids. The name itself has 85% of the people just turn away and go, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. You see how they see the con, folks? It's all a con. I've said it on this show 100 times. It's all a con. It's all of it. It's all a fraud. We're the milk cows, right? We're the slave class, right? They don't care about us. They don't care about us. You know, to side note, if masks worked, they wouldn't let us wear them. That's all I got to say. That's the type of situation that we're dealing with. These people. Tell me about the arrest. I want to go over that again because there's nothing that I would love to see more than to have these people arrested and en masse. Judges, prosecuting attorneys, sheriffs, police officers, nurses, all of them. Tell us about the arrest. We have something on the horizon, hopefully.
So what I can tell you is distinctly, I do what I do because I love children and families, and that has been my passion my whole life. Okay, so when they took my children, it just catapulted me even more forward. I was already an advocate in the community. They would ask me to speak at Luke Air Force Base and that sort of thing. So this catapulted me even more passionately forward. The documentation that we have put together, as I've mentioned, one person I was working with was murdered. So, but the documentation that we have put together is very distinctual. Okay. And people don't realize the importance of the affidavits. So again, I just want to reiterate the importance of affidavits, that based on affidavits, people can be arrested. You have to understand that when the police take a person into custody, oftentimes they're writing an affidavit, and it's based off of the affidavit that the parent or the child or the parent or whoever's being arrested is literally placed under custody in jail, right? Okay. So these affidavits are very important. So the affidavits we've written through the 30 cases is very distinctual because it's showing that specific people are not following the Constitution, like if it's against a judge or that kind of thing, that they are literally committing treason. So in particular, in my case, distinctually, I would like to see Judge Colleen McNally and Judge Kristen Hoffman arrested for treason. Can I prove it? Absolutely, I can prove it with their own court documents and their own signatures. Okay. And this goes for all the other players behind them. So I have gotten my information, this documentation, into very important hands. Okay. I don't want to disclose who. It's actually in multiple places and multiple sources, but it's the highest of the high. That's all I'm going to say. Okay. Besides God.
Right on. Right on.
It's the high authority figure that I could go to. And I have confirmation that absolutely that distinctual person does have my documentation along with his team. So I'm waiting patiently, while still comprising documentation, because I'm looking forward to arrests here in the state of Arizona. And I do believe that that's going to be coming at a certain point. One of two things is going to happen. Either the bad guys are going to end up winning and Biden's going to get into office, which I think there'll be a civil war before that happens. Okay. Or Trump's going to remain in office and he's going to continue to drain the swamp and he's going to continue to do what he needs to do. And guess what's going to be on the chopping block? Child Protective Services. They're going to restructure that. I do have private meetings. I do know that in the future, that is one of the things that they are distinctly looking at how to restructure it. I'd love to be on that team specifically.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, me too.
And to defund parts of Child Protective Services. I do want to protect the children. I don't want any child to be abused. But what they've done is turned it into a human trafficking ring. So first, we need to have arrests and accountability to slow down the conveyor belt of all these children going into the system. And then we need to distinctly take away funding. Like, for instance, when they adopt a child, the bonuses, that needs to be eliminated completely. What are we thinking? No, you don't get a bonus for adopting the child out that you stole, that you.
How about getting a bonus for putting it back at home and reuniting the family? Then you get a bonus. How about that? How about you bring the family together, then you get a bonus? Just switch the flow of money. Just switch it the other way. I've said that like a year ago. If they just made it where you put families back together, then you're rewarded. None of this would happen. But now they're rewarded to do they're rewarded to do bad things, right? They're rewarded for bad behavior. Yeah. Doesn't anybody see how this is?
Well, because it's a human trafficking ring. What we need to do is take away their power. We need to arrest and have accountability for some of those major players, like, for instance, all the way up to judges. It is treason what they've committed in certain of these cases. Okay, first of all, we do need to have jury trials. So Martin Lynch here in the state of Arizona has distinctly put together a law to bring back the juries across the United States. So what we were trying to do is put it here in the state of Arizona first, and then have it go across the country. So I believe we're the epicenter. We're the worst, I believe, in the country. And then on top of it, our stats clearly show we are the worst in the country. So we've really been working hard for years. I just want to give a shout out to all those people, all the court watchers, all the people that have been pushing, Melinda Sherwin, all these people for years, literally pushing to make sure that our parental rights that they had already taken away don't continue to be dissolved. We are fighting back. So we need to get the jury trials back. We need to defund parts of CPS. I look forward to actually being heavily involved with that after the arrests. And there has been talk about that. So, but we need to get to that point, and we have to have arrests. So really, life is about seeing people that take action. So we can talk and talk and talk all we want.
Sure.
But the bottom, there needs to be arrests, and we do have that documentation as supportive documentation and evidence to the police that when it is time, or federal authorities when they come in, just to distinctly arrest them.
Yeah, we've had Martin on the phone or on the show here numerous times. He does great work there. Matter of fact, you probably need to have Marty back on again here pretty soon and get an update. I think I had him on 2 or 3 months ago. That's what I want to see. I want to see the judges go down. They as an organization have done. No one has done more damage to this nation and the families of this nation than the judges as a whole. And of course, they're all members of the bar. You'll see, folks, when this all comes out, if the whole swamp gets drained, there'll be no more bar, and you will see just how criminal. Now, I've got Ron Gibson coming on the show on Friday on my other show, and he's going to lay out once again one of my most popular shows that he's ever had him on, the 12 presumptions of the court. People don't understand the 12 presumptions of the court. All the odds are against you the moment you walk in that freaking building. Everything's against you, and you don't even realize it. It's their club. And you're just an outsider coming into their club. That's why you get no club benefits and no club membership, because you're not a member. I mean, this is the most unbelievable how we've been duped and conned for my whole life. My whole lifetime has been living under a con. One big con. It's all coming down. Unless you said Biden gets somehow miraculously pulls this off, the big steal, then you're right. Then I think we do take to the streets. At that point, What do you got to lose? Because they're coming after me and they're coming after you. They've already said it. So I'm going to die on my feet before I live on my knees. That is my line in the sand. That's not negotiable ever.
Right. So we need to stop them now, because if they're not stopped now, then the power will just continue to grow. So I'm really hoping we are able to stop them. This keeps popping up in my head, and it is relevant as you see that there's affidavits across the country being written for the voter fraud. So I've been a huge advocate of affidavits for years. So it's one advice I would give to parents is that you write an affidavit and you get it on the record. Now, if you're represented by counsel, counsel needs to file it. If CPS does not refute that, it becomes factual on your record. Okay. So that is significant, because in the future, one of the things that we really are talking about is auditing certain cases. And if there's fraud involved, what I would like to see happen when I get on a distinctive panel that restructures CPS, I would like certain cases to be audited, and for them to go back. And if there is fraud on the record that can be proven, I want the parents to be able to file to get their child back. So that's one of the things that we have. We have a whole list of things we've worked on for years, laws we've written that haven't been passed yet, distinctive ways to correct the system. And I would like that and it's going to have to fall in a certain category. And again, this is futuristic stuff that I'm talking about, but you need to get those affidavits on the record, people, to show that fraud. Now, I want people to know that if you have a Child Protective Services case, when they took your child, the case manager wrote a affidavit saying that the information they said against you is factual. And from that point forward in court, you are fighting against that because you never refuted it. Okay. And that's something you rarely will ever see. You won't even see that affidavit. It's very hard to get a hold of that. But I want you to know that this is what they start your case out with. Okay. A case manager who doesn't know you, doesn't know anything, will come in and say, yep, the house was dirty, even if it's just one dirty dish in the sink. They'll write a factual affidavit. The child can never go back home because there's so many dirty dishes in the sink. And then the allegations grow from there. And sometimes they write additional affidavits. And because it's not refuted. Okay. So the documentation that he just put up on the screen is something I wrote distinctly about Arizona. And it has the Protections Act link in there. And also it talks about Alistair Adele, the state prosecuting attorney, and that kind of thing, and how she even spoke about exculpatory evidence. She was served exculpatory evidence in my case, and then she suppressed the exculpatory evidence because she did not do the right thing. So she's now part of the RICO and the fraud that's going on in the state of Arizona to maliciously prosecute me, because the documentation, such as the CASA affidavit, really does show that distinctly the state harmed my children, not me.
I'm still amazed. And I was just thinking about your case this morning, how you were charged with a crime, and a licensed surgeon did the surgeries. But you somehow are getting charged with the crime. It's like you somehow mind melded with him or tricked him or had some other sort of influence over him to do surgeries. This person is a licensed professional. He's in a medical degree, I'm sure, and probably licensed by the state. Yet you somehow forced him to perform surgeries, and it's your fault. Folks, I mean, do you understand the criminality, the level of criminality we're dealing with here? Facts don't matter. Doesn't matter. The fact that you're a bad parent, you're a good parent, doesn't matter. It's all about your children. It is, was, and will always be about the children. Melissa, we're just running out of time here, dear. Do you have anything you want to say before we let you go, or any websites you want to send to, or any updates, or anything that people can do to help you, or what can we do, the people that are watching, how can they get involved? What can they do to make a difference? Because it's going on in your town, folks. If it's not going on in your town, it's going on in a town right next to you. Believe me, there's rings all across the country. If it's not in your exact neighborhood, it's in a neighborhood close by. Believe me when I tell you that. Melissa.
I do believe facts matter. I do believe, I'm hoping around the corner we are going to see those arrests and the collapse of the cabal across the world, actually. So if you need to reach me again, my email address is letjusticeprevail at protonmail.com. And the best thing you can do is to write an affidavit because if you have thousands and thousands of affidavits going to the right agency, once the swamp is drained, you can imagine not only may they possibly audit your case, but this is how we're fighting voter fraud. Do you see? So it's the same thing. We need to be writing these affidavits. If you need a place to send them to, you are welcome to send them to me, and I can try to.
And how do people get a hold of affidavits? Is it something you could do like a web search and find affidavits? You have to get an affidavit specifically for your county. Is there one that's like a blanket one that everybody can use? What do people have to do? Do they have to go to the local resources? Is there more of like a general location where they can go and download that stuff? Do you know?
I have helped hundreds of families write affidavits. It is something I'm very passionate about. You can attempt to try to do it yourself. You can just type in affidavits and I'll give you examples. Different states have slightly different laws and there's certain little things that you have to have on there. But anyway, as I said, you can reach me at letjusticeprevail@protonmail.com. If you have distinct questions about affidavits, I'm not a lawyer, but I can try to answer that and try to help you.
Another great resource too is Save Our Children CA. Pam Olson over there does great work over there in California. Had her on my show numerous times. Both of you, I consider both of you warriors with what you're doing. Melissa Diegel, please keep me updated on what's going on. You know, you're always welcome on this program. Anytime you need to come on, to have you, if it's something breaks or you need to get some information out, I'm happy to have you on here and host you on the show anytime. And we certainly pray for you and your family. And I'm telling you, we're rooting for you. I cannot tell you how much I want these people to go down. You don't even know. I eat, sleep, and breathe justice for these scoundrels. I can't even hardly sleep. I'm telling you, I can't hardly sleep. I mean, that's the fact of the matter, folks. I don't sleep much because I'm so motivated to take these criminals down. I can't even fucking sleep.
It makes me smile just thinking about them being taken down. It is my motivation. They need to be held accountable. We need to stop that conveyor belt. So hopefully we're going to be successful.
Indeed. Melissa Diegel, thanks so much for joining us here on the broadcast. Always great to see you. God bless you and your family. And we'll keep on top of everything. And anything I can do to help, of course, just let me know. Be happy to help.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Have a great day.
You.
All right, folks. There goes Melissa Diegel, crime victim from family court. You know, and she's not alone. Millions of children have been taken. You've heard her. Millions of children have been taken. And those are from, those leave behind millions of parents that are victimized. I mean, the crime, the magnitude of the crime is beyond the scope probably of most people's even comprehension of what they do to these children when they kidnap them. And then, of course, they don't let you know where the foster family is, if they even go to foster family, because they don't want you to go out and searching for them. And a lot of times they're trafficked out of the country to be sex slaves for people out of the country, right here from America. Today, it's going to be happening. Today, there'll be children kidnapped illegally without due process by CPS. Today. It's probably happening somewhere right now. There's a CPS knocking on someone's door looking to take their children. As we have this broadcast, I'd almost guarantee it. Thanks for looking in. I burn to take these people down. I cannot tell you. I live for this, to take these people down. I will not stop until they're extinguished. Thanks for looking in. James White, Northwest Liberty News.